Story 1. Always a good question, original poster. In case you do not get enough answers to this common question, I have provided a few variations from recent discussions. Have fun exploring the topic. Story 2. Critical thinking is essential for making informed decisions and navigating today's information overload. Yet many people are not taught how to do it effectively. Story 3. Critical thinking is essential. Understanding what makes a strong argument and recognizing the signs of a weak argument are important. Learning how to process information and reach your own conclusions, rather than simply following others because of shared votes, beliefs, or high regard, is vital. The majority of people avoid independent thinking because it is easier to echo the prevailing narrative and live within confirmation biases. Many do not argue logically or thoughtfully. Instead, they raise their voices, insult others, or resort to violence to protect their pre-existing beliefs. Story 4. How to properly vent without turning it into a 3-hour rant session. Story 5. Emotional intelligence involves understanding and managing emotions. It is crucial for relationships, leadership, and success, yet it is often overlooked. Story 6. The ability to recognize when a person is not good for you. Many people think they have to associate with someone for any reason, but if that person is harming you physically, mentally, or in any other way, you have the power to leave or remove them from your life. This applies to both friends and family. Story 7. Emotional intelligence. Understanding and managing emotions, both your own and others, is crucial for building strong relationships, resolving conflicts, and navigating life's challenges. Story 8. Just basic cooking skills. It is a matter of being self-sufficient, saving a lot of money, and controlling your health. Story 9. Ability to tie a knot. Nobody knows how. Commercial fisherman here. Everyone I know cannot do it. Cannot spell either. Story 10. How to handle emotions like anger. It genuinely shocks me how many adults are comfortable being extremely aggressive and angry. Story 11. Public speaking, speaking to a crowd, and speaking to strangers. Do this well and confidently, and your life will immediately improve. Ideally, your parents should have taught you these skills. Story 12. Basic financial literacy. It is surprising how many people do not know how to manage their money, understand credit, or invest for their future. It is not taught enough in schools. Story 13. How to read nutrition labels instead of relying on advertisements. I do not know if it is a skill rather than just educating oneself. Story 14. Learning how to have fun on your own and loving your own company is very important. Otherwise, you may hang on to toxic relationships or do things that can drag you into a mess due to peer pressure. All of this stems from the fear of being alone. You do not have to be alone always or all the time, but if the situation arises, you must be comfortable with that alternative. To do this, you need to take time to be by yourself from time to time. Train yourself to realize that you will be fine even if people are not around to support you. Story 15. Understanding media, journalism, propaganda, advertising, opinion, and conspiracy thinking is the most important thing right now. However, it would be hard to find teachers who are not compromised. Story 16. Problem decomposition. Most people associate the term problem with the manifestation, not the actual root cause. The ability to analyze causality deeply is a crucial step in design thinking, enabling the creation of effective solutions. This principle applies to all aspects of life. Also, compound interest. Story 17. Not thinking you know everything is important. It is okay to say, I do not know. Also, when someone asks you a question, do not say just search for it online. Instead, say, I do not know. My friend sometimes makes me feel like an idiot. Story 18. The ability to delay gratification. And no, I am not talking about edging. I am talking about investing in your education, saving for retirement, paying cash for things tomorrow instead of taking out a loan today, and tackling your hardest tasks of the day first thing in the morning. Story 19. Self-governance is the ability to independently obtain information about a subject. It involves figuring out the who, what, where, when, why, and how through simple steps. These skills are especially important now because remote work is becoming the norm. If you do not take the initiative to learn what is required, you will not be successful in a remote job. For example, in online forums that advertise remote jobs, such as social media groups and online communities dedicated to remote work, job postings often appear. However, some people ask questions like, "Where do I apply?" despite the information being available. If you have self-governance, you will proactively seek the application details once the company name is provided. You will research the company, visit its official website, find the careers section, and follow the instructions to apply. Without self-governance, you might simply ask how to apply, signaling that you may not be a suitable candidate. Self-governance is a crucial skill in today's remote work environment. Story 20. General automobile maintenance includes checking fluids, changing the oil, monitoring tire pressure, and learning how to change a spare tire. Story 21. Taxes. Opening a small business. Applying for a loan. How to create a resume and negotiate a salary. Credit management. Basically, how to manage adult responsibilities. Story 22. Sewing. As a man, sewing is as important as cooking. It is a basic survival skill, and you do not have to be amazing at it either. Learn how to sew things together. It is a life changer. I recently sewed Velcro straps onto my new gloves and my winter coat to create a seal between my coat sleeves and the gloves. I have poor blood circulation in my hands, and they crack when they get cold, which happens whenever the smallest amount of heat escapes. I am ready for this year's winter, and finally, I will not be cold anymore. No more bleeding hands. Story 23. The number of people I know who do not know how to start a fire is surprising. In a survival situation, starting a fire is a very important skill to have. Story 24. Cooking is the easiest way to improve your quality of life, your social and romantic interactions, and even your financial situation as a bonus. Story 25. I see many people mentioning critical thinking or problem solving. I will take a different approach. Reading instructions. Many broken things can be fixed simply by reading the manual. Even babies have manuals. Just read the book. Story 26. How to cook. I found out my colleague's husband does not know how to cook and depends on her to prepare all his meals. I think it is just sad. Parents should teach their children how to take care of themselves. If they do not have time, there are basic cooking classes for teenagers and young adults at a reasonable price. Story 27. 1. Being able to understand the perception of another person and resolve conflict. 2. Holding space for people and validating their feelings. 3. Being able to influence other people's opinions. Not many people have these skills. Story 28. Emotional intelligence involves the identification and awareness of emotions, acceptance of emotions, and coping skills for emotions. Your emotions are valid and you feel things for a reason. The next step is processing why you feel that way and deciding what to do about it. Sometimes we are hungry, angry, feeling isolated, or have not slept in a while. Sometimes things are just generally not great. Any emotion we feel is an indicator of something else going on. The question is, what is that something else and where do we need to focus? It sounds simple, but many of us grew up in environments where the message was, "Stop crying or I will give you something to cry about." We learned early to push down our sadness, grief, and anger. As we got older, we did not understand why we were depressed and anxious all the time. We were not listening to ourselves. Emotions are good indicators, and the sooner we learn how to read them, the easier it becomes to navigate life and ourselves. Story 29. In kindergarten, I learned two basic things that most humans have forgotten how to practice. Mind your own business and keep your hands to yourself. Just imagine what our country, the United States, would be like. Story 30. How to turn on Do Not Disturb consistently at night. My sleep and mood have never been better since I started doing that every night. Story 31. Basic life and survival skills include thinking, managing money, speaking and communication, first aid, cooking, cleaning, emotional intelligence skills, dealing with problems, and much more. Story 32. Actually conducting research instead of accepting a tweet at face value. Story 33. Natural state of calm. Emotions are a huge part of all of us, but I have found in life and many of my current roles that calm tends not only to prevail, but often the other person or people in any elevated situation will either break down and talk or vent, or go through the roof and leave, typically exhibiting very wild behaviors. Either way, you instantly become the person who takes the time to pause and assess the situation, or the other person or people involved are not ready for that calm and assured interaction and react strongly. It takes significant learning, growth, and a thick-skinned demeanor to reach this level of understanding, but I believe this is one of the greatest skills anyone can learn. Story 34. Cooking is not only a good way to save money and be healthier, but it is usually accompanied by cleaning. Story 35. I believe money management should be taught alongside the fundamentals of mathematics. Story 36. Well, I am an 18-year-old male and was never taught how to clean, cook, iron, do my hair, or what hygiene products to use. I also did not learn how to wash clothes or other basic everyday skills. It was just never expected of me. My parents did not want to burden me with things like that. However, these are skills that everyone needs, and many people take for granted that their parents teach them these things. Even though my parents did these things for me with good intentions, it was honestly a major disservice. As I got older, I felt really bad about my incompetence, but I did not know what to do about it. Now, after a few years, I am somewhat confident in these skills, but I wish I had not had to spend so much energy on learning them. Story 37. Critical thinking, money management, listening, empathy, improvisation, cooking, starting a fire, most importantly, being aware and curious about the world around them. Not just the big picture, but also the details that surround them. I saw a post today from someone who moved into an apartment and could not figure out what the television antenna plug and the telephone plug were. If that person was born in 2006, which would make them 18 and quite well positioned to afford a place of their own, they would have encountered both of those things at home while growing up. Story 38. Basic car maintenance. As a mechanic, I see many people who cannot even change a flat tire or check their own oil. It frustrates me when someone comes in asking us to fill their windshield washer fluid. Come on, you can do that yourself. Story 39. Money management, cooking, and driving. Driver's education teaches the bare minimum. People need a more comprehensive course. Story 40. Knots. It is amazing what you can do with a good piece of rope. Story 41. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I did not know any of it until I had to be trained for my job as a care worker, but it should be taught in every school as an international standard. Any one of us at any time could be the person to witness someone going into cardiac arrest. A day of training can be the difference between life and death, and I am sure it has been many times. Story 42. Grammar and punctuation. Half the posts on social media are unintelligible. Research. You do not have to know the answer, just where to find it. Asking on social media is not where to find it. Story 43. Definitely emotional intelligence. I know many really clever people, but they have no idea how to cope with emotions or interact with people on an emotional level. Story 44. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, first aid, and automated external defibrillator cards should be a requirement for obtaining a learner's permit. Story 45. How to tie knots. The number of people who come to work and do not know how to tie basic knots is staggering. Story 46. The number of entitled people on Reddit demanding links for something they can find in literally seconds is too high. Story 47. Self-analysis. Critical thinking concerning one's humanity. Story 48. Learning the difference between justification and explanation. Story 49. How to use a search function. Story 50. Basic computer skills. It is 2024. If you want to work in corporate America, know how to turn off your computer once a week and run your updates. Saying you are not a technical person is no longer acceptable. Story 51. This might sound somewhat old-fashioned, but cursive writing is important. It does not mean that you have to use it, but I believe that everyone should be able to sign their name, read it, and write it if they want to. Personally, I have always had horrible printed handwriting and have found my cursive to be much better. Story 52. Communication with an emphasis on boundaries, sex, and conflict resolution. Story 53. Cooking. It's all too easy these days to either order food for delivery or just take something out of the freezer and heat it up. Learning to cook, even just a few things, will not only save money but also be better for your health and provide you with more delicious food. Story 54. How to make a budget with your finances. Learning cardiopulmonary resuscitation and first aid. To understand that there are different cultures aside from their own. Learn to cook some simple basic meals, pickle items, and bake bread. My mother had that in school during the 1970s. How to find a suitable profession for themselves. Basic use of a computer with Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. Learn about recycling, avoiding littering, and reducing food waste. Story 55. Social. You would be amazed at what you can accomplish simply by having a positive experience with another person. Story 56. How to be in a relationship. People think it comes naturally, but it does not. The hurt from this lack of education is widespread and immense. Story 57. Critical thinking. Do not automatically believe everything you hear. Skepticism is a good trait to have. Story 58. Basic money management. Budgeting, reconciling a checking account, and more. It should be mandatory to graduate from high school. Story 59. Sign language, even if used for the purely selfish reason of communicating in situations where one should remain quiet. Story 60. Ability to communicate effectively. Most people shut down or use unhealthy coping strategies. In my home, thankfully, everything we did was a conversation, and every decision was made as a team. Our home was a unit, a team, a partnership with a no one left behind attitude. I realized when I went to college that this was not most people's experience, and I had to help many people in life become good and effective communicators. I wish everyone had this experience. I realize this is a total privilege, and I am extremely grateful for it. Story 61. Cooking. I would be broke if I could not cook. Eating out is very expensive. Story 62. 10-finger typing is much faster because you can proofread while typing. Your 2-finger system, which you taught yourself, is not nearly as fast. Story 63. People should become at least familiar with one type of trade and one type of art. Story 64. 1. Be grateful for every breath and for your loved ones. 2. Be silent when angry. Take a moment to be silent and respond instead of reacting to a situation. 3. Focus on one thing at a time, whether at work or in life. Story 65. Cooking. Men who cannot cook and expect a partner or spouse to do it for them are no better than actual children. Such an unpleasant attitude. Story 66. Driving a manual transmission vehicle. Additional important skills include changing a tire and performing your own oil change. Story 67. Sign language should be learned along with spoken language. It is not just for deaf people for inclusivity, which would already be a significant benefit for the entire community, but also as a common way to communicate silently with others. It can revolutionize nightclubs, allow you to speak to your neighbor across the street without shouting, and help when you have a sore throat. I dislike the sound of whispering, but with sign language, that becomes unnecessary. Story 68. Basic human physiology, including how your body turns food into energy. Basic neuroscience, how diseases and pathogens affect our cells, how cancer works, human reproduction, and why you should not insert objects without a flange into your rectum. Story 69. Cynicism. Don't just believe what you are told. Do a little basic research. It doesn't matter if the truth is coming from a friend, a television presenter, or a politician. People are good at sharing information they heard, even when it is false or misleading. So don't just accept your preferred truth. Edit. I said cynicism, and it has been suggested that I mean skepticism. Feel free to use either. I am both cynical and skeptical of much of what I hear and read. There is always someone pushing an agenda. Story 70. How to cook. I don't mean 5-star meals, but enough to make yourself meals without getting sick. When I say this, I mean using all fresh ingredients, not some pre-prepared meal. I understand that after a long day, it's probably the last thing anyone wants to do. That's definitely how I usually feel. But being able to cook for oneself is such a necessary skill for everyone, and yet I've met so many people who can't. Story 71. Time management helps in every aspect of life. Having good punctuality puts you ahead of 80% of people. Story 72. I'm going to list 2 things: how to cook, even just basic meals, how to manage personal finances. Bonus: learning about nutrition and exercise. Story 73. Backing into a parking space requires knowing where the edges of your vehicle are. This is an important skill that some people find easier than others, but it is worth learning. Backing into a parking space is the safest way to park. You will back up either way, so doing it when you have the most knowledge of the surrounding area and can block the road or aisle to control traffic is safest. When you back in, you are not backing into traffic, you are controlling it. Story 74. Every person should have cardiopulmonary resuscitation training and complete a firearm safety course. Story 75. Basic sewing skills allow you to repair your belongings instead of purchasing new items. Story 76. How to count calories. I think it is important to manage overindulgence. Story 77. Learning to play an instrument is valuable. Not everyone needs to become a master, but the ability to make music is deeply human. I believe everyone should at least know how to do something with an instrument. Story 78. Taking a decent photo. Understanding lighting and framing is not that hard, but you have to learn it. Story 79. Many of these things listed here I agree with deeply, but I am not sure if I would call emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, or having polite manners a skill per se. Maybe more of just a positive personality trait. That said, a good general knowledge of first aid is something that could make a huge difference if one is ever in a situation that requires it. Story 80. Learn how to read a map. You should know where you are and not be dependent on step-by-step directions from a machine. Also, when the computers crash, you will be the only one who can find Costco. Story 81. I want it to be Morse code because I have been trying to learn it for a few months. Unless I am in prison or trapped underground, I cannot really see how it is useful. Story 82. Basic first aid. Most people know some basic first aid, but everyone should know all of it in my opinion. Story 83. Swimming, first aid, and enough critical thinking to take leadership roles in emergency situations when the need arises. If everyone can save themselves, there will be more calm, level-headed people available to help others who cannot. With more people willing to help, society as a whole will have better chances of survival through calamity and unforeseen dangers. These are steps to restoring humanity's sense of compassion, which is unfortunately undermined these days with many distractions. Story 84. Listening with intent to understand versus listening while waiting to respond. Story 85. Manners, especially around the table, go well beyond opening a door for someone and expecting an exaggerated reaction. Offer to help when a person is trying to load a large box into their car. Restoring faith in humanity is important right now. Make it a game. You earn points for offering a seat to the person who needs it most. You lose points if you completely ignore the situation. Story 86. Troubleshooting. It can vary greatly across different applications, but the ability to find the root cause of a problem is a valuable life and career skill. Story 87. Your great-grandfather probably had a course in logic in high school. That would be a good subject to revisit. Story 88. Typing. As a teacher, the number of people I see, from children to adults, who peck type is astounding to me. Story 89. Shuffling. I know it does not seem important, but card games are a great way to connect with people. Odds are you are going to play cards sometime. Volunteering at nursing homes, at a summer camp with family or friends. Maybe it is a fading part of culture, but I have met a lot of people who never learned. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.